Hi there, John T. Hickmott here. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something that almost everyone experiences when they begin this mind-body approach to healing chronic symptoms, and that's the voice that says, am I doing this wrong? Or it says, I must be getting this wrong in some way, or this probably isn't going to work for me. A very common voice. And in this video, I want to speak about that voice and how it's not a mistake. In many ways, when you start noticing that part of you, you've actually struck gold, because that part is often showing you exactly what this work is about. Now, if you've been learning about the mind-body approach for a while, you may have heard that much of what makes symptoms become chronic is the fact that we repress emotions. We push things down, we distract ourselves, we stay in control, and those emotional energies don't get a chance to move. So when people hear that, they often assume that healing must mean they need to go searching for some big hidden repressed emotion somewhere in their past. They think they need to dig something up, find the real issue, uncover something deep and dramatic. But very often, that's not how this process works. That doubtful voice, am I doing this wrong, is usually carrying fear, urgency, tension, or a deep need for certainty. And those are the very emotional states that many of us have spent our whole lives trying to avoid, control, or push away. So when that part shows up and says, am I doing this wrong? It's not a problem. It's often the exact emotion your system is ready for you to learn how to be with. In other words, instead of needing to go searching for some big hidden repressed emotion, the thing you're meant to be with is already here, right now in front of you. That's why you've struck gold. Now, before I go on sharing more about that, I do want to mention an important nuance here. Sometimes a voice inside us isn't just saying, am I doing this wrong? Sometimes it's saying, this feels unsafe, or this situation isn't right for me. And that's a bit different from what I'm trying to share here. Part of this work is learning the difference between a part of us that is uncomfortable with uncertainty and a deeper inner wisdom that is telling us something truly isn't safe or appropriate. And at the beginning of this process, many of us can't tell the difference. We've been so detached from our internal experience that everything feels like danger, or everything feels like we're doing it wrong. So a lot of this journey is about gently learning that distinction over time, often with support. And the common voice of, am I doing this wrong, when you're meditating or allowing or trying the tools, is very often the part you've struck gold with. This voice of doubt and confusion shows up for almost everyone at some point. Sometimes it shows up early on, sometimes it appears after a few weeks or months, but it's incredibly common. And what usually happens when this voice appears is two things. First, we believe it's us. We identify with the doubter. We think, this must be me, this must be the truth. And second, because we believe it, we start to act accordingly. We stop the tools. We question the method. We think we're defective. We assume we're the one person this whole approach won't work for. And I'm making this video because I want to share something really important about this voice. Noticing that voice is actually a very good sign. In fact, it's necessary in this process, because this approach is all about learning how to notice and allow as much of our internal experience as possible. And that doesn't just mean noticing the calm parts of us, or the relaxed parts of us, or the hopeful parts of us. It also means noticing the uncomfortable parts, the doubtful parts, the confused parts, the parts that want control and certainty. Much of why people develop chronic symptoms in the first place is because they've spent years not allowing those parts of themselves. They've been trying to stay in control. They've been trying to be good, trying to be calm, trying to be perfect, trying to keep everything in order. So when they come to this approach, when they come to see me, they often bring that same perfectionistic energy into the healing. They want to do the method perfectly. They want to meditate the right way. They want to feel the right things at the right times. And very quickly, a voice appears that says, am I doing this wrong? And because of how we've been taught to relate to our thoughts and emotions, we assume that because a thought or emotion is there, it must be true. It must be us. We must follow it and stop what we're doing. But in this work, noticing that doubtful voice is vital. Not because you need to argue with it, not because you need to convince it that everything is okay, and not because you need to make it disappear, but because you're learning how to be with it. You're learning how to be with the doubt. You're learning how to notice how that part of you actually feels. Does it feel fearful? Does it feel tense? Does it feel panicked? Does it feel desperate for certainty? And instead of talking yourself out of it, you learn how to sit with it. You learn how to allow the emotional quality of that part to exist in the body without trying to fix it or convince it otherwise. And if there are other parts of you trying to fix it, trying to convince it, trying to calm it down, those parts are welcome too. If parts feel afraid, if they feel urgent, if they feel like something must change, those emotions are also part of the experience you're learning to allow. Nothing inside of you needs to be pushed away in this process, even when it feels wrong. And that is not a comfortable experience, and it's not meant to be. And this is another really important thing to understand about this process. When you start allowing these parts of yourself, it doesn't always feel better straight away. In fact, it may never do. In fact, sometimes it can feel more intense. You might allow the part of you that says, am I doing this wrong? And suddenly there's more fear in the body. There's more tension. There's more sensation. And this can be confusing because most of us have been taught that something is correct if it makes us feel calmer, more relaxed, or more relieved straight away. But in this approach, that's not always what happens in the moment. Over the long term, yes, we do this work because we want to feel better, we want more freedom, we want less fear, we want less pain. But in the moment-to-moment allowing practices, which we're learning here, things can sometimes feel more intense before they settle. If you've been holding emotions back for years or even decades, it can be like opening the gates of a dam that's been holding pressure for a very long time. When the gates open, the water won't just trickle out politely, it can rush out. And this is often something called a healing crisis, and it can feel uncomfortable, but it's safe, it's normal, it's a vital part of the process. This is why so many people, including myself, describe this journey as having this up and down quality to it, because this is why support can be so helpful. Having someone there to hold space for you as this intensity moves through can make a huge difference. You can even try this for yourself. So when this video ends, sit quietly for a moment with no distractions. Don't pick up your phone. Don't turn on the TV. Just sit. Close your eyes or keep them open if you'd like, either way. Very often you'll immediately notice sensations in the body. You're going to notice restlessness. You're going to notice tension. You're going to notice an urge to move, an urge to distract yourself. Those are the experiences we're learning to be with. We're learning to just allow ourselves to sit in. There's nothing you need to excavate. It's already here. And as you allow it, things may feel more intense when you allow restlessness, or they may stay the same, or they may ease off for a bit and then come back later intense. That rise and fall internally is the natural lifespan of emotions. And part of this process is learning that just because something feels intense right now, it doesn't mean it will feel like this tomorrow, or next week, or in a couple of moments. We're learning to hold space for that movement, however it wants to move. And part of that is learning how to be more adaptable. Sometimes you're going to need quiet time. Sometimes you're going to need more connection with people. Sometimes you're going to need to slow down. Sometimes you're going to need to get out into the world a bit more. There isn't one rigid formula to do in this process. We're learning how to respond to what we actually need moment to moment instead of controlling our experience all the time. And as you go through this process, you're not always going to get it right. Sometimes you'll push when you need to rest. Sometimes you'll rest when you need to push. Sometimes you'll follow a doubtful part and later realize you just needed to sit with the emotion behind it. That's part of the learning of how to become more emotionally intelligent. Much of this work, and life in general, is about gently experimenting with your internal experience, learning to be more adaptable, more flexible, less rigid, less controlled, and being okay with sometimes getting things wrong, as long as you're not harming yourself or others in the process. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. If a part of you is saying, am I doing this wrong? That doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you found something important. You're being shown the very emotion you need to learn how to be with in that moment. You're not meant to get rid of it. You're not meant to convince it. You're meant to relate to it differently. And if other parts of you are trying to fix it, trying to calm it down or talk you out of this fear, those parts are also welcome. That's the important nuance. All of it can be here. And as you learn to sit with that whole experience, your relationship with your mind and body begins to change. And that's where healing starts. That's where pain no longer has a reason to be here anymore. So that's it. I know a lot of people come to me with this, am I doing this wrong feeling? This won't work for me. And I very often teach them that part of them, that doubt, that confusion, needn't try to be fixed or convinced otherwise. That's how we've been taught to relate to our thoughts and emotions. In fact, the discomfort of being in that thought and being with that emotion that brings, that's what your mind and body is trying to teach you to sit with. When you do begin to learn how to sit with it, there is often this fear that if I sit with something that feels very uncomfortable, it's going to take over, it's going to last forever. So you make space for the parts of you that fear sitting with that emotion. And then you learn by gently leaning into allowing these parts of our psyche over and over again daily, that actually things do rise and fall. And actually we won't go through periods like we think we will of deep desperation and despair. Actually, the reason we may have been going through those periods in the past isn't because we've allowed ourselves to feel fear. It's not because we've allowed ourselves to drown in doubt or confusion or desperation. It's because parts of us have been trying to push those emotions away. We've been trying to rescue ourselves from those emotions. And when you truly learn about what allowing means, you realize that when we allow a doubting voice to be here, when we allow fear to be here, it may feel big, it may feel intense, but it rises and falls. If that's something you're not fully convinced about yet, that's why practitioners and I alike, we offer support to help people move through this process. If you'd like to understand more about how to get that support, then read the caption below and there's different options to join my community or to book one-on-one time with me. Otherwise, any questions you have, anything you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hopefully hear from you soon.